I've often talked about policy in the Middle East. I've talked about the Qatar-Turkey pipeline. I've talked about what the greater plan for the Middle East is. Well, one of the people that have been very important in helping me conceptualize this is the words of General Wesley Clark. In March 2017, he gave this speech, and it is very, 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 very troubling. Take a look.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me, and one of the generals called me and he said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, "No." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs," meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran."
Oh boy. This is ridiculous.
The truth is about the Middle East is, had there been no oil there, it would be like Africa. Nobody is threatening to intervene in Africa. The problem is the opposite. We keep asking for people to intervene and stop it. And there's no question that the presence of petroleum throughout the region has sparked great power involvement. Whether that was the specific motivation for the coup or not, I can't tell you, but there's always been this attitude that somehow we could intervene and use force in the region.
It's revolting. This is not new. Now, that conversation that he's referring to in the conversations, that was filmed in 2007. That conversation refers to a conversation in the 90s, and he clarifies here. So this speech sort of rocked a lot of people, scared them, because what ended up happening was, obviously we had these wars that were going on. Now, this next video is from a guy called Luke Rudowski. He does a lot of stuff with Tim Pool. He's been on this for a very long time. He's a solid guy. He's not afraid to confront the elite. He's confronted people like Henry Kissinger at events, and there's some footage of that. Here's some footage of him actually meeting the General Wesley Clark in September 2013.
General Wesley Clark, Luke Rudowski, WRC. There's one question, if I could just ask you if that's okay. Would that be all right? Sure. There's a speech going around right now on the internet where you talked about the upcoming wars in Syria and Libya and Iraq and Afghanistan, saying that people were telling you this was going to happen.
Came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs," meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran."
It's happening now. Is there a follow-up? Is there any information you know or any thoughts on the speech you gave?
No, those were discussions that were being held in the Pentagon a decade ago, reflecting discussions from 1991. And it's a tragedy how it's unfolded.
Seeing it come true, it's unfolding. What does that say to the larger extent of everything?
It says that the United States needs to be a strong force for peace and justice and global cooperation in the world.
Do you have anything else you want to say about that talk or any information you came across? And how do you feel Obama's handling Syria right now? is just mind-blowing that he only said that he hopes that the U.S. is a force for peace and that we need to be a force for peace when we're not. So there's obviously a lot of other things that Wesley Clark knows but is not saying. What are those particular things? We don't know, but there's a lot more to the story than we know, and that's why we're here trying to find out. Ask questions, demand answers. Look up that speech by Wesley Clark. It's a very powerful one. He told us exactly what we're going to get into, all the wars, all the foreign aggressions, and we're in them now. It is happening. This is all a plan. It's nuts.
That's crazy. That's insane. That I was baffled when I saw that. Honestly, guys, that just blew my mind when I first saw that. Luke Rudkowski, more credit to you guys. Honestly, go subscribe to his account. I'm not trying to leech any views off him or anything. Those videos have been around for a while. I hope that you guys follow his work. He is phenomenal. I hope to have his understanding and the amount of. He's just so sharp. The guy's so sharp. Birds of a feather flock together. Him and Tim Pool are very powerful individuals. But how crazy is that from General Wesley Clark? He could barely look at his face. He could barely look at the camera when he walked away. He was just look, and he turns around. It's like like he knows what's going on. He knows exactly what's going on, and he says, "I hope that the US acts like in the interests of global peace." And he seems like a solid player, but it's just sad because it's like he saw this coming, and there's probably more he knows, but he just can't say it, possibly out of fear. And it's very frustrating because it's like, what else is down the pipeline? I mean, this was only a peep into the future. He probably got in a lot of trouble for that clip. Who knows? It's guys, it's very frustrating because it alludes to a lot of the conspiracy theorists have been saying for the last few decades, which is all of this has been planned, legislation has been set down, we're following a certain set of things, a certain sequence of events that lead us to now, and that is what's most scariest of all, because it's like there's nothing you can do about it. That's ultimately what it says, right? Well done, Luke. I don't know how he's still alive. I don't. Either of them. But this is sort of what's going. Keep this in the back of your mind whenever you see stuff going down in the Middle East. It'll help orientate you. I wanted to briefly mention our friends over at Spectator Australia. They've launched a new podcast. It's called what's it called? I think it's called Countercultural. They just released their first episode. It's hosted by Gideon Rosner, who puts out some solid stuff for the IPA, and they've got a new channel. So go subscribe to it. Get them over 1,000 subscribers this week. The Spectator Australia TV. They're currently at about 360 subscribers. Check it out. It's very well made. It's excellent. More importantly, share it with all your followers. Get them onto it. They put some quality stuff up. Rowan Dean, which most of you like, is backing this, and he does appear on this as well in video. It's phenomenal. It's a vodcast. They call it a podcast, but it's a vodcast, and there's a video component, and it's really good. It's really well made. Please go support them and follow them on all their social media. It's quite excellent. In other news, in America,